very busy. Many important matters require a king's attention.
I'm king now. King now.
I am king. I am king. I am...
Kiss it.
I am...
Kiss it again when I return.
Your fingers or your king doesn't
Fingers.
discuss your battle plan. He's one.
Stupid
Your
girls.
fingers or your tongue. I am the king.
I'm telling mother.
So at the beginning, we both say it, right?
No. That's shameful. All right, and we're up in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Joffrey Podcast. My name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Twitter. And with me, as always, a guy who's blowing up more than the Sept of Baylor. It's Catfish. Catfish, how you doing?
Oh, wow. That is quite an introduction. I am wild with fire for tonight's episode.
Oh,
how about that?
Snap. I don't get it.
Oh, okay. Well, let me explain it.
No. All right, we got to keep moving. Catfish, we are 6 weeks away from Game of Thrones Season 7.
What? It seemed like just last week we were 7 weeks away. Wow, this is really coming up fast.
It is coming up fast. We are doing our Countdown 7 podcast to get us ready for Game of Thrones Season 7. Oh, my goodness, this is incredible.
Oh, man. I can't wait. I like, though, that we're making the season just twice as long as it is. You know, people who don't listen to the Joffrey podcast are only getting 7 weeks of entertainment. But for those of you who are special, who know the one true and rightful king,
you're getting 8 weeks of entertainment and 7 other podcasts.
Exactly.
Now, Catfish, we have a bunch of wonderful prizes that we're going to be giving away once Game of Thrones is back on the air starting July 16th.
We got what I like to call a boatload.
A boatload?
Yeah.
Well, Beast, it's...
Let me tell you
what's what
something.
I like to say when I say big, overblown, awesome, delicious.
Skip ahead.
Okay. Prizes. That's how many we
Well,
have.
I guess
That's
you did
incredible.
skip ahead because you went right to D. You know what?
What?
It's so big.
Yeah.
People have been wondering, what's been happening with Gendry? He's rowing all the prizes to us. He will be here shortly in about 6 weeks to row them right to you.
And so what we've decided for all our wonderful double L's.
Double L's.
Well, double L's, Catfish, for Season 7, I decided to roll out something new. And double L's is a term I like to use when I refer to loyal listeners.
Wow, that is new and fresh.
So we want to give these prizes to you listeners. And in the past, we always did it based around things like iTunes reviews and that kind of stuff. For Season 7, we're rolling out something new. And that is we want you to become a non-unstraightener. Now, you may be wondering,
What's a non-unstraightener?
well, we created the Joffrey podcast because people were messing up and saying lies about His Grace King Joffrey.
It was
And
disgraceful.
And so we needed to set the record straight. But if we needed to set the record straight, that proved people were unstraightening the record.
Right.
And so then what we have is we have people who help us non-unstraighten the record. And that's the way you can enter into our contest to win some of these great prizes we picked up at the Game of Thrones live concert experience. DVDs, prizes, toys, all sorts of awesome stuff. And so all you have to do...
A lock of Joffrey's hair.
That is the grand prize. But all you have to do is either retweet our tweets about the Joffrey podcast with hashtag Joffrey of Podcast, or share one of our posts from our Facebook page about Joffrey of Podcast. That's entitled Facebook.com/double P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural, podcasts. So Facebook.com/double P podcast. So you retweet us or you share the Facebook page, you will be eligible to win. And just in 1 week, we have so many great non-unstraighteners joining us wanting to win these prizes. Do you want to tell us who these people are, Catfish?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say there's one last way you can do it, and that is if you like the Double P Podcast page on Facebook.
Yeah.
Not only does that mean you're entering the contest, but you get to learn all the notifications that we have about all the variety of podcasts we have on the Double P Podcast Network.
It's like a prize itself.
But you and Mork are doing a very closely listened to podcast on Twin Peaks called
Twin Peaks, The Gifted and the Damned.
That's my favorite part, even though I only was on one podcast. We've got some other podcasts coming up. The Strain is mercifully ending this year.
Yeah, but it's back the same night as Game of Thrones.
Amazing. We are going to be doing double P work, and that is podcast and then podcast.
Right.
We are going to be doing it for you. As well, we have a great podcast on the show that I love, which is Ash
Versus
Evil Dead
versus
Bubba
versus
Catfish.
Groovy, baby.
Groovy. So if you like our page, you'll get notifications about all those great things. So let me first start by saying we have got some great listeners who not only retweeted about last week's episode, but also gave us some wonderful feedback.
Oh, thank you so
much.
much.
So I'd like to read just a few of those feedbacks.
Okay, you're allowed to read a few.
All right, I'll read a few. Our favorite man, Patman23, Pat Spinagle, who writes a blog about many different things, Game of Thrones being one of them. He says, we were taught by at CJGman67 either be first or best. I won't be first. Best is such a subjective term, but they'll be better than me. I don't know about that. Patman, you are great. Now,
yeah.
Nathan Dawkin, at Nathan Dawkin, says, I'm hoping on the next Joffrey podcast, at Fit and Trim and at CJGman67 can tell me Sir Pounce is safe with all that commotion at King's Landing.
Oh, man.
Ooh.
I'm saying there may be 7 gods, and he used up at least 7 of his lives right there. Sir Pounce.
Batman23 also says Lady Mormont's nickname for Littlefinger, male-ish. That's the best.
Oh.
I agree, because I came up with it.
Okay. So, Catfish, I want to real quickly list our non-unstraighteners who retweeted, who shared our Facebook posts about
Great.
Joffrey Podcast.
Do it. We love them.
We got hashtag I am Burrito, who's at Adair. That's ECKADAIR. They're a member of the non-unstraighteners, as is
Albert Godleski at A Godless Key. I like that. That's cool.
Frank Mackey, who's at Cranky Prankster. I love that Twitter handle.
We have Richard at Mariners C.
Our good friend Jonathan Teglin at Teglin Jonathan.
That's not as original as Godless Key.
Hey.
We have at Snow Lisi.
At Hamlet is Dead.
At Geek Girl Soup.
Our good friend Matt Foster, who, believe it or not, his Twitter handle is at Fat Monster.
I love that. Our old friend Iron Trone.
A guy I'd like to call Double M.
Double M.
Matt Murdock.
Oh, man, another old friend. I feel like these people are just holding us in their arms and giving us a nice warm hug. Sean at Hey Ref.
Our good buddy Kelly Underfoot.
Right, and at Grumpy Go Bear.
Our good friends at Podcast Winterfell.
And then there's something called the GOT Research Project at Questeros_org. You see what they did there? Not Westeros, it's Questeros, so there's some information.
I'm a bit confused. How did they do it?
Oh, my God, they did it that way. We also have an amazing new iTunes review. We love them. We're not making that part of the competition, part of the contest this year, but we love when we get them, when people, again, wrap their arms around us. I believe this is from Matt Papa, the title is Longtime Double L.
Double L?
What is that? Double L? Long-time listener.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and gives it 5 stars. It says by M Papa 4. That's why we're guessing it's our friend Matt Papa. He says, this is the first podcast I ever subscribed to way back in 2013. Holy cow, has it been that long,
We've
Bubba?
been doing this too long.
These guys always put on a good show and have an innate ability to squeeze every bit of content they can out of the TV show and its lead-up trailers. They create new and original ways to approach the books and TV show, and it's always fun to see what they've come up with. Keep it up. Looking forward to Season 7. Thank you so much, Matt.
We love it. On this week's The Joffrey Podcast, we're going to be going over some possibly breaking news about Season 8. Season 7 hasn't even started yet, and yet Season 8 news is breaking. We're going to do a great debate about which religion you would want to join in Westeros based on the way it's going to kill you.
Okay.
And then we're going to end with a classic section I like to call a double B.
Double B?
Well, double B is a term I like to refer to when I'm talking about book bitchin', and it's about everybody's favorite mother of His Grace King Joffrey, Queen Cersei.
Oh, that vixen.
I'm telling Mother.
Catfish, we need to get to something I like to call double N.
Double N?
Negative news.
Oh, no.
And so this is our top feature on this week's podcast. Literally, on the day we're recording this on a Friday, June 2nd, Entertainment Weekly had an article they released today where we could have some of the most depressing news ever. Entertainment Weekly was interviewing somebody from HBO, I like to call a double P.
Double P?
Programming president. It's HBO programming president Casey Bloys. And they asked Casey, they said, so as of now, the final season, aka Season 8 of Game of Thrones, could air in 2018 and or in 2019, depending on the showrunner's needs. And HBO Double B programming president Casey Bloys responded, yeah, They have to write the episodes and figure out the production schedule. We'll have a better sense of that once they get further into the writing. Catfish, we have waited extra long for season 7. We've waited more than a year for season 7, and now they're telling us we might have to wait like 15, 16 months for Game of Thrones final season and only 6 episodes final season 8? That's insane.
Well, here's the problem. The problem is their reasoning, anyway, for delaying the season was they needed to be winter everywhere. So presumably winter is coming even more in the next season than this season. So the question is, can they write it in time so it comes out the same time next year? Or if they've delayed it enough, do they have to wait until it's cold again so then it won't come out until this time in 2019?
Oh, my Lord. I think that could actually destroy the show's fan base. And I know HBO past series like The Sopranos, they would take long breaks and you would have a year without a Sopranos new episode. But this show is a bit of a serial. And by that I mean Serial. Spell check me, please.
Okay.
So this is about...
Not something you eat.
Right.
Okay.
But like something you eat you're addicted to. Like curdled milk cheese grown down in Dorne with delicious sides of peppers and honey, duck flavored with delicious cheese and raspberry tart bread.
Skip ahead.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
You know what? I'm just going to tell you, I was waiting. You know, I think next time I'll wait until you hit the magic word, like Groucho. Tonight's magic phrase was lamprey pie.
Oh, God,
I was going to wait until you hit lamprey pie.
But like something delicious, like a cereal, you need the constant fix. And HBO gives us that fix. And so I think fans have stuck around for this seemingly 14-month, 15-month break between season 6 and season 7. But if you're talking about like a 15 or 16-month break...
I disagree.
Whoa, I think that's going to be tough, man.
I disagree completely with you.
Oh, wow.
Everyone will come back because if it was between season 1 and season 2, maybe you'd lose a lot of people. But all the people who are super into Game of Thrones... They're gonna be ready to come back for that last season. In addition to that, I think you might even pick up more people who are like, well, more and more people hear about it, just like people heard about The Wire, etc. Also, this happened with Breaking Bad too, where there was a big break, and it gives people a chance to catch up on all the previous episodes and then watch it again. No matter when this happens, if it was like 3 years, I think there'd be a letdown. I don't think that even 2 years will stop it.
Oh,
People,
man,
it'll be just as big.
I don't know. No, I could understand why HBO would consider this. They're going all of 2017 without Westworld, their most recent big breakout show.
Right, and they took them like 3 years to get that going in production anyway.
They did, and so they will have Westworld next year. And so if they're thinking, we got to keep these subscribers, we can't have the subscribers escape away to Netflix, escape away to Showtime, because Showtime has Twin Peaks, or any channel, Starz, because Starz has Ash vs. Evil Dead and Outlander and all these shows. You know, they can't let them escape, but... they also have to have something big. They also have to have something big that the audience is looking forward to.
Well, I never know how much people do this. I mean, I continually keep my premium channels the whole time, but I assume people would be like, that's fine, then I'll just quit HBO for a year and then come back. I don't...
And I honestly might do it. I do love Veep. I do love Silicon Valley, but enough to... every month, because a lot of HBO's other shows, I have to be honest, I'm not into, and I thought Westworld was good to okay, but I don't know if that's enough to pay, what is it, $150 a year or something like that for all 12 months? Ooh, I don't know.
Right. I mean, I know sometimes what they do with these premium channels is you get them all, and then, every year I call up DirecTV essentially at the same time every year and say, like, what can you do for me? Like, this is just too expensive.
Yeah.
And then they give me $20 rebate or $30 rebate a month as long as I keep a certain level of things. So that kind of keeps me in with these premium channels.
Well, what other shows does HBO even have that's going to still be around? The Leftovers, I know, is a show that isn't watched by many people, but loved by a good handful of people. That's about to end.
Yeah, it's about to end this week.
Yeah. What else does HBO have that will keep the subscribers glued? So maybe they have no choice but to screw us Joffrey podcast fans and delay Game of Thrones until 2019.
It's sort of a question.
I know they've
for me, it's John Oliver. I have to have my John Oliver, and that's once a week. He goes on vacation a lot. They do have his sort of opening segment is on YouTube every week, but not the entire show.
They do have a new show coming up from David Simon, the guy who created that great show, The Wire, about the porn industry out in the San Fernando Valley that James Franco's going to star in. But because we haven't seen it, would you subscribe because you like David Simon so much after The Wire that you want to see his new show? Didn't it work for Treme too much?
No, it did not work for Treme. It went on forever and ever after I stopped watching it.
No, it was still pretty good. Treme was still pretty good. So this is something... Double L's, we want you to go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Double P Podcasts, facebook.com/Double P Podcasts, and tell us if Game of Thrones disappears for all of 2018, are you going to keep your HBO the whole year? Are you going to be too disappointed? Are you going to be able to stick it out? Because let's be honest, there's no promise that George R.R. Martin's going to release a new book to fill that hole in 2018 for us.
And in the end, we're only getting at least 10 is something. That's 2.5 months. It's not even a quarter of the year. But then when you get down to 6, that's not very much at all.
Yeah, so go to our Facebook page, Double L's. We want to know what you think about this new breaking news.
Right. And then, of course, because there's only 6 episodes in the last one, we're going to have to start our preview 12 weeks before it starts. 18 weeks of entertainment.
Or probably 7.
Many important matters require a king's attention.
Okay, Catfish, it's time to get to a section we like to call Double B.
Double B?
Well, Double B is our infamous book bitchin' segment. When the show was on the air, the book bitchin' segment was about how the show wasn't doing a good job of representing the greatness of the books. But now that...
From your point of view.
But now that we're past the books, book bitchin' is about the show possibly spoiling what's going to happen in the books. And so this week, based on some listener feedback, way back in August when we did our last podcast in a book bitchin' segment, is on Her Grace, Queen Cersei. What have we seen in the show that may spoil some stuff that has happened in the books, and when these books come out, we may know they'd already happened. Catfish, last week you talked about the infamous prophecy.
Yeah, the prophecy was that, first of all, she'd see all her children die. Zing, that came true. The next was that she'd be killed by her own kin, and so we talked about last week whether we thought that would be Jaime, her brother lover, her brother... Yeah. Or would that be the man who just doesn't measure up?
Evil Uncle Tyrion. But Catfish, what's interesting, as we do this book bitchin' segment, we're obviously going to be covering things in the books that hasn't happened on the show, may never happen on the show. But if you haven't read the books yet and you don't want to be spoiled, you have to be careful because we are going to talk about things in the book. So, Double L's, if you've read the books, hopefully you'll enjoy this next section. If you haven't read the books, you have to decide. And we understand if you want to jump out now. So, Catfish, talking about, this killed by a sibling, this is something that the show left out of the prophecy. And so let's just read it real quick.
Okay.
The section that was in the book that the show didn't have. And so this... If you remember the beginning of Season 5, it started with a Cersei flashback where she went to visit this old woman's tent with her childhood friend, and she found out about these prophecies. And so here is how it appears in the 4th book, A Feast for Crows. Cersei says, "Will the king and I have children?" When the fortune teller Maggie the Frog says,
"Oh, aye. 6 and 10 for him, and 3 for you. Gold shall be their crowns, and gold their shrouds," she said. "And when your tears have drowned you, the Valonqar shall wrap his hands about your pale white throat and choke the life from you."
So there it is, right there on the page. This fortune teller, who everything else comes out to be true, is saying that Cersei will die by a Valonqar wrapping his hands around her pale white throat and choking the life from her.
But Bubba, Valonqar, is that a special kind of car?
Valonqar is a High Valyrian word. If you know your Game of Thrones inside and out, you're a Song of Ice and Fire inside and out. Valyrian is the language of the old dragon riders who lived in Essos 400 years before the show and the series even began. And Valonqar, in their language, the books tell us means little brother. Mm-hmm. Now, both Jaime and Cersei are twins, but Jaime came out second, so he is technically her little brother. And then evil Uncle Tyrion is also...
But speaking of second, he also went back for seconds, if you know what I mean.
Uncle Jaime. But then evil Uncle Tyrion's younger, so he could also be a little brother, a Valonqar. Now, one of the things that's tricky about this, though, and George loves being tricky, in a different prophecy and a different word in Valyrian, we find out that Valyrian can have gender-neutral words. And so Valonqar, sure, it might mean little brother, but in this case, if it were gender-neutral, Valonqar might mean little sibling, which would open it up to sisters and women. But then it gets even more confusing. Cersei doesn't have little...
Right, I was going to say, so...
Doesn't have a younger sister.
Okay.
But one thing that people have been reading the books have thought about is, yes, Cersei could be killed by the little brother. But why does that necessarily mean her little brother? Couldn't she be killed by, for example, Bran Stark? He's a little brother. Couldn't she be killed by Uncle Euron Greyjoy, who was Balon Greyjoy's younger brother?
It seems a little tricky by half.
It does, but of course, when you mention it could be a gender neutral, and Valonqar could be, little sibling, who's somebody who wants to kill Cersei, who is a younger sibling, admittedly a younger sister, but Arya Stark. Queen Cersei is on her list. So this has been debated about who it
basically
could be.
opens it up to almost everyone in the world, including Sir Pounce.
Poor Sir Pounce.
Sir Pounce is going to pounce on Cersei, claw Cersei's eye out, and take her down. She's going to get a bad infection.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Yeah, she's going to be Sir Franken Cersei.
So if Cersei goes in season 7, that would certainly spoil what would happen in the books, but there's a good chance she could live till season 8, and then George would at least have a couple more, another year to try to get this next book out, The Winds of Winter.
Okay, but let's be clear about this. For people who have read the books, they know this. For people who haven't read the books, they probably have had this made clear to them at some point. Even though the producers talked to George to get an idea of what's happening at the end, it's already been clear that many things that happened in the book didn't happen in the show, including a really big thing. And I'll just say, Jon Snow was not the first person to come back to life, not the first major character. Okay, I won't spoil any more, but
right.
So stuff that's happened in the books hasn't happened on the show. Stuff that's happened in the show hasn't happened on the books. They're not really tied to what happens in the books, and it won't necessarily be a spoiler for the books.
You think that with something as big as the death of major player Cersei, they would actually go completely off the board? See, I disagree. I don't think they would do that. Now, one of the things that, besides Cersei's demise, which I think with this prophecy you have to assume is going to happen in the books and therefore happen in the show, is that George R.R. Martin, many years ago, was saying when people would ask him questions about A Song of Ice and Fire, he said that several people, this was his words, he said several people would sit the Iron Throne before the end of the book series. Several people would sit the Iron Throne before the end of the series. But from what we've seen in the books so far, really only Robert, Joffrey, and now Tommen have sat the Iron Throne. So that's only 3 people. He said several people would sit it. When he said this, those 3 people had sat the Iron Throne. Here we are in the show. There are only 2 seasons left. And now we've only had one other person sit the Iron Throne. That's Queen Cersei. So, question you would have to ask is Cersei actually going to sit the Iron Throne in the books? And then if it's just Cersei, how many other people could there be? Now, the one thing the show has done, as you've pointed out on multiple podcasts, Catfish, is the show has cut out a lot of plot, a lot of people, and a lot of characters from George R.R. Martin's books. And one of the characters they've cut out from the books, who seems like they certainly might get a shot to sit the Iron Throne, is a character who may or may not be Prince Aegon Targaryen. So this is thick in the woods. Once again, hopefully everybody's read the books and understands the basic facts, but just so we're all on the same page, the Mad King's oldest son was a character named Rhaegar Targaryen. He's never really ever appeared on the show. He's been mentioned a bit on the show, but never appeared on the show. He abducted Ned Stark's sister, a.k.a. Jon Snow's mother, Lyanna Stark, and they had Jon Snow. Rhaegar, when he abducted Lyanna Stark, he was married to Prince Oberyn and Prince Doran's sister, Elia Martell, and they had 2 kids. One of the kids was a kid named Prince Rhaegar. Theoretically, the Mountain killed him in Robert's Rebellion under the order of Tywin Lannister. Yoggity, yoggity, yoggity. The books present a character who is presented to readers and to Tyrion as the actual Aegon Targaryen, the little boy who actually wasn't killed and, in fact, swapped by Varys, so that he could escape Robert's rebellion and the crushing. A lot of people think that this guy is a fake, but he might be one person who would sit on the Iron Throne. So the question becomes, Catfish, do you think Cersei will actually sit the Iron Thrones in the book? And if so, when would it happen? Would it happen after Tommen's death? Would it happen after this new character who's not in the show, Aegon Targaryen, sits the Iron Throne? What do you think? Is Cersei going to actually sit the Iron Throne in the books? What do you think? Yes or no?
I think so, and it depends what they want to do with the books. I mean, I think for the show, since there's only 13 episodes left, there's not going to be musical chairs with the thrones. It's going to be Cersei, then maybe one other person will have it temporarily, and then the last person or persons to sit on it will sit on it. As far as the book goes, how much more plot can he put in the books? Because every new book he likes to add a whole bunch of new stuff. So the people that we have grown to know and love or hate, their time kind of gets crowded out as well.
Well, in a Winds of Winter preview chapter, so if you don't want to know about any of the released Winds of Winter preview chapters, skip ahead 2 minutes. But in a Winds of Winter preview chapter, Aerion Greyjoy, yet another Greyjoy, younger brother of Balon Greyjoy, is held captive by his brother Euron Greyjoy, the guy who did appear in the show in Season 6. And he's given drugs, and in these drugs he has a vision of his brother Euron Greyjoy sitting on the Iron Throne. And so is it possible that the show would have Euron Greyjoy, a character who's only been in 2 episodes and was just introduced in 2 episodes in Season 6? There's no way he's going to sit the Iron Throne on the show, right? Even if the books have him in this vision, there's no way he would, right?
It's possible, but there's not enough time for them to do it, except for he sits on the throne for a hot second before he gets killed. But I doubt it. I think this is the kind of thing that the show has streamlined. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This season, we get the throne settled, and then next season, the 6 episodes, is the battle against the White Walkers. I could be wrong about that, but that's the way I feel they kind of have to do that.
If the quote-unquote the South, the Iron Throne and the Seven Kingdoms, if it gets settled this year, does this mean that this is the end of Cersei, in your opinion, then?
Absolutely.
So you think she's gone?
I think she's gone. I mean, do you think they would possibly hold her until, like, the 2nd episode of next season and then get rid of her and just have the last half of the last season be against the White Walkers? That kind of diminishes the White Walkers as a major threat. As I've said, the books seem to do, and the show has done a little bit less.
That's your opinion. No one else agrees with it, thank God.
Okay.
But I would say that
people who haven't read the books agree.
They have a lot of characters on this show. But one constant since the very beginning has been Cersei. She's been so strong. And you would think, watching this series all these years, that you would think that there are certain characters who you just can't kill. And even though Cersei may go this year, I'm just having a hard time believing that the show could let go of Cersei, who, apologies to Jon Snow, apologies to Daenerys, evil Uncle Tyrion, all the rest, after last season, she seems like the dominant force. Now, I know you would think, oh, well, they couldn't get rid of Ned, and maybe they're setting me up for this, but I would still have a hard time seeing that they got rid of Cersei before the very end.
Okay, I can see where you're coming from. My only question is this. So how do they resolve this situation and move? Do you agree with me that you think the throne situation is going to be resolved? They're going to fight amongst themselves and then join together to the White Walkers? Or you think they're going to do the White Walkers first?
No, the White Walkers are definitely the end.
Okay, so
but
then
I'm saying that why does the South have to be? Why can't there be temporary truce? Or why not Cersei say, yeah, I don't believe what's north of the wall. You guys deal with it. I'm going to stay here.
Well, and if that's the case, then you're taking my other supposition, which is they take care of the White Walkers first and then Cersei. I can't see it happening that way. I think this season they have to resolve, unless, again, you are saying...
drink. Every time Catfish says again, everybody drink.
Right. Again, because I just said it and you disagree with me. If you think...
Yeah, then say something new. I don't...
Okay, that they are going to keep Cersei around and then they're just going to have the White Walkers be the last 2 or 3 episodes of the last season, then I think that's de-emphasizing them as the major antagonist in this series, which you've said you think they're not not de-emphasizing them. But I think if you keep Cersei around until the middle of the last season and then deal with the White Walkers...
Why not until the very last episode?
I just think it makes more sense that the human fighting gets resolved before the supernatural fight.
George R.R. Martin has said the series ends on a bittersweet note. To me, and there are many ways you could read it, to me, what is a bittersweet note? We defeated the great evil, which we all assume that man will defeat the evil White Walkers and their army of whites. But what would be bittersweet is we win, and yet then the petty squabbling over the Iron Throne continues. It would be a bit like,
all right.
and I have admittedly not read the series of Lord of the Rings, but I know one thing that they always talk about in Lord of the Rings is, spoiler alert for Lord of the Rings novels, after they get rid of the One Ring and get rid of the evil Sauron, is that the hobbits come back and they find out that while they were away, Hobbiton got sacked. I almost wonder if there isn't something like that.
Well, but you're forgetting the real bittersweet ending to this series, which is that there's all the petty squabbling.
Right.
And then who arises to unite everybody to take on the White Walkers? Joffrey.
Oh, no. What if Joffrey dies?
And then Joffrey dies at the end. That's the bittersweet ending.
Man.
Is that it's sweet that he came back.
I would delete every podcast episode if that were the way it was.
It's sweet that Joffrey comes back, but only he can unite everybody against this supernatural force.
All right. Now, we've kind of pivoted away from the double B part of this, the book bitchin' part of this. So where we left Cersei in the books is she is honestly at the end of season 5. She had been trapped in the Sept by the High Sparrow and his faith militant bastards. And so she was let out. She did her walk of shame, and she's there back in the Red Keep. Now, one of the final chapters in the books does imply that Cersei is acting like, okay, I've been defeated, but there are hints that no, she's going to come back and fight. How much of the quote-unquote getting rid of the Tyrells, meaning Marjorie, Mace Tyrell, and them, and the High Sparrow.
I was trying to figure out who the Tyrells were.
Well, that's how Charles Dance pronounces it sometimes. He calls them the Tyrells, and then he calls them the Tyrells sometimes. And so I was trying to do my own little dance, like Charles Dance does.
It's a dance homage.
But how much do you think of that has been spoiled? Are we to assume that, yes, it might happen differently in the book, but the High Sparrow, the Faith Militant, and for all intents and purposes, the Tyrells are going to be crushed by the Lannisters? Has that been spoiled for you, you think? Is Marjorie dead?
I think so. I think so. She needs, presumably, I mean, maybe I'm just thinking the logic from the show, but she needs to be getting rid of, and then we see that then that's how we lose all of Cersei's children, right? We assume that's kind of Tommen takes a dive. It could be something else.
Is one thing I've said before on podcast Winterfell, our good buddies over there, is that in the books, Tommen is so much younger. Tommen is like a tween, if I understand correctly, maybe even be younger in the books. And so I have a hard time seeing a tween commit suicide like that in the book. So I certainly, based on the prophecy of Maggie the Frog, and to be honest, just the way the series is going, usurper brother Tommen is going to have to go down. But I don't quite see that being suicide in my take on it. And to be honest, Myrcella, Cersei's daughter, is actually still alive in the books. So
right. I liked they brought this storyline in. There was some storylines in the books that I wasn't a fan of, but I liked this what came in. But it's sort of the Sparrows did sort of dominate and did a few things that temporarily shuffled the deck, but then we ended up with Cersei on top.
In the show, yeah.
In the show, right.
And so you would wonder, you would definitely think, even I think a book reader would think, yeah, the High Sparrows and the Faith Militant, they can't last. And
right.
I think because of the infamous walk of shame, even book readers want Cersei to be the one to do their downfall. But just like in the show, I think people liked Marjorie Tyrell. I think in the books, I'll speak for myself here, I think people like the Tyrells. I think people like Marjorie. And so you just wonder almost how in the world the Tyrell's downfall might come, maybe from this Prince Aegon character or this Fagon, the fake Aegon character in the books might be involved in their kind of undoing. We shall have to see. It'll be interesting.
It will be interesting. It's hard for me to imagine that things will deviate so much, but once again, we are missing some major characters in the show that are still alive in the book.
Next week when we do a double B, double L's.
Double B, double L.
Well, we're going to do book bitching again on our next podcast, loyal listeners.
Okay, all right.
And so next week we're going to be talking about Bran Stark. Give us your thoughts once again on our Facebook page, facebook.com/double P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural, facebook.com/double P podcast. And tell us what you think the show might have spoiled about the journey of little Bran Stark.
Oh, Bran.
I'm king now. King now.
Catfish. People love our double S's.
Double S's?
Our spin-off specials.
Ooh, I feel like we just had one.
We've done so many here on the Joffrey podcast. And so one of the type of shows we haven't spun off yet from this great The Joffrey podcast is we have not done a true PBS debate show.
Oh,
like
right.
the McLaughlin Group, like you would see on the McLaughlin Group. So we bring you now to the Baratheon Group, named after His Grace King Joffrey Baratheon. We'll be debating issues, religion in the world, and we're going to decide what the best religious death is in Westeros. Joining us from the Highgarden Weekly Standard, we have Hugh Highhunter.
Thank you.
And from the Storm's End Weekly, we have Lawless Stokeworth.
Why, thank you. Yes.
And finally here, from the King's Landing Daily, we have Merwin Waters. Thank you. It's nice to be here. Religion plays a big part in our capital city, plays a big part in our world. But which is the best? Which one do you want to be? And we're going to decide the best on the death. What is the best death you could get? So, let's go around the room. Bravos, across the narrow sea. Bravossi, House of Black and White. They've got the many-faced God. Great religion, great. How are you going to die in it? You're going to be killed by an assassin. You'll have your throat slit, and you'll be bent backwards over a stool. Hugh, from Highgarden. What do you think of this?
Well, let me say this. If anyone is going to be bent over a stool, it's going to be my handmaiden, not me. I'll tell you that one thing. Being bent over a stool is for the ladies.
But I protest. Hugh, that is inappropriate.
Good answer, Lawless. What do you think, Merwin? Well, sir, who cares? Next god. The drowned god of the Iron Islands. Great way to die. Drowning. You lose oxygen to your brain, get a nice high. But you can't be brought back, and you're stuck on the Iron Islands. Let's go to you, Lawless. Drowning god, what do you think?
Well, I'm very afraid of water because I'm always stuck in this very constraining clothing. And so if I get it wet at all, well, then it carries me down. Let me say one thing. I am afraid of water animals. Well, they're very... what if I get nibbled on before I drown? Drowning is okay, but the nibbling is what I worry about. Just a little nibble. And I have very sensitive upper arms, and if they get nibbled, that would be a very distracting death.
Don't worry. Nobody's going to nibble on you, Lawless. Let's go to you from Highgarden. You!
Yeah, you can say that again. That is absolutely true. Now, let me say this. In my capacity as in the King's Guard, I have used a water torch on many recalcitrant interlopers, and I will say this. It does not look pleasant. Not at all. Not for me drowning.
All right, let's look at the... I haven't spoken... Yeah, you figured that out, Merwin. Good. Lord of Light from across the narrow sea. These Essos gods so crazy. But the way you're going to die, you're going to be burned alive. Who wants to be burned alive? We don't care. We wouldn't waste any kindling on you, Merwin. You, what do you think? Lord of Light, good or bad?
Well, let me say this. I like temperate temperatures as much as the rest of the person, but I have to say, recently it's been very cold, in Westeros. So obviously to be toasted up would not be so bad. But plus, may I add this? There's always a possibility that you come back.
Let me tell you, if you join the Lord of Light, you're going to be burned alive slowly, just like your answers. Lawless thoughts.
Oh, my dear. Now, see, is there any way I can combine? If they light me on fire and then they throw water on me? Would that be all right?
Now, the dominant religion here in Westeros for all the kingdoms except those fools up north, is the faith of the seven. Now, you want to talk about a bad way to go? How about having a 7-pointed star carved into your forehead and then have a wildfire boom? Ooh, one bam and you're done. Just like me with Lawless.
Yeah, what? Oh, my goodness. I thought we were going to discuss that. Well, I don't like pain.
Yeah, that's the way they do it. Lawless reads some of your paper sometimes. What do you think?
Well, of course. You see, I'm not one who is afraid of the knife. I'm quite handy with the dagger. As we say, I'm very versed in all things that are pointy and sticky. But I will say this. I don't like something carved into my forehead. Now, I wouldn't mind going up in the wildfire. It's almost like being burned alive, except, may I say this?
Get to it quick,
no possibility of coming back. No, I say no.
All right, Nick. Am I ever going to get a chance to talk? There, you did. You're fine. Let's go up north to these final people who want to be one of the seven kingdoms. They follow the old gods. Now, I've heard reports with the old gods, you get killed by these evil whites and the White Walkers. But guess what? You're not really dead. You're reborn. Is that the way to go? Rapid fire responses. You, old gods, yes or no?
Yes.
Wrong. Lawless, yes or no?
No.
Wrong. Merwin, you're letting me go wrong. Just wanted to see if you were awake. Finally, we see these invaders coming with the Queen Daenerys. They're bringing Dothraki religion of the Great Stallion. Now, what I found out is a Dothraki wedding without a couple of deaths, boring. So do you want to get disemboweled while you're dancing with your daughter at your wedding? I don't think so. You, Dothraki, what do you think about these foreigners?
Stupid, dumb. They know how to die. You die with your dirk out.
Trying to blend in so they won't kill you. Good point, you.
Did he say dirk?
I'll teach you dirk later, Lawless. Merwin, I'll let you speak on this one. No, I won't. I'm kidding. Let's go around the group. Who decides what religion are you going to go with? Hugh, from High God.
Lord of Light, come back.
Lawless, Storm's End.
I want to be a zombie with blue eyes.
Merwin, from King's Landing Daily. Well, I really think I'll be agnostic. Pick a side. The correct answer, Baptist. Bye-bye.
I am the king.
That's been this week, Catfish. 6 more weeks to go. It is so painful to wait. Oh, my goodness gracious.
But one thing we don't have to wait for is this week's Joffreys of the Week.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Catfish, why don't you explain to all our listeners what the Joffrey of the Week is?
Well, every time we have a Joffrey podcast, really just giving it up for the leader, the greatest human being, real or fictional, ever created. Joffrey, wise, strong, patient, loving. So every week, in order to give honor to Joffrey, we like to note somebody real or fictional that has embodied the characteristics of Joffrey and the many faceted parts that he is. So this week, I'm giving it to a group of people.
That's great, because not one person can represent His Grace King Joffrey. The more the merrier. Who is your Joffrey of the Week this week, Catfish?
Well, it turns out that this week we found out that the people who were hacking the Democrats weren't Russians, but they were actually Americans pretending to be Russians. And yeah, So because they managed to do such wonderful machinations to set two countries against each other just by doing a sneaky thing and pretending to be someone else, because they showed that elegance of mind and that capacity to sort of plan 4 steps ahead, I'm giving it to those brave Americans who pretended to be Russians to hack the Democrats to take down the election. So for you brave hackers who pretended to be Russian, you get my Joffreys of the Week. How about you, Bubba?
Well, my Joffrey of the Week is also an American, Catfish.
Great.
Because I'm proud to be an American.
Because at least I know I'm right. That's the way I sing it. Because I know I'm right.
Oh, brother, God help us as a country. But, Catfish, when you pick a Joffrey of the Week, you have to pick somebody who, what I like to say, double R, really represents His Grace King Joffrey.
Well, it's hard to do, just like you said. It's hard to do. You can always really find like 1 or 2 facets of the multifaceted Joffrey Baratheon.
But this week, somebody Double-R'd.
Double-R'd.
Really represented Joffrey in a way that is in some ways unbelievable. This person is a true Joffrey hero, in my opinion.
Who is that?
Well, I'll give you a slight hint. What do you think Joffrey's greatest accomplishment in King's Landing was?
Well, I think there were two things. I can't pick between the two of them.
Let's hear.
One was he cleaned up the city of cats.
Feral cats, yeah, they're
right?
gone.
And the other one was he gave some strict moral education to some ladies of the night.
Oh, those are two great things. But in my opinion, and there's so many great things about King Joffrey that it's tough to pick just one.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, Joffrey's greatest thing
Yes.
was how, with a certain traitor, he did a beheading.
Oh, a beheading.
Right. He beheaded, decapitated an evil traitor, and then put that head up for the world to see. So can you guess who my Joffrey of the Week is this week?
I can't imagine.
You can't imagine? Maybe you've heard of Kathy Griffin. Kathy Griffin, a comedian or perhaps a Joffrey warrior here in the United States of America. She found her evil traitor, decapitated him, and let the whole world see that she would not put up with a Ned Stark, or excuse me, a anti-Ned Stark-like figure. I love it. Kathy Griffin, my Joffrey of the Week.
Wow, those are just two they're shining examples. You'd think it'd be hard to find people, but somehow every week we manage to find some people who at least are able to give one small part, one small facet, or maybe just the nugget of the core of Joffrey. And so that was a brilliant one, Bubba.
For everybody here on the Joffrey Podcast, my name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Twitter.
And you can hit me up at CJGman67. That's your 67th favorite CJG Man.
And be sure to check out our next podcast, the third one we'll be doing as we count down to Game of Thrones on HBO July 16th. So, you'll hear us next time on
The Joffrey of Podcasts. Oh, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. All right, let's do it. Bang.
Stop this. Stop this. Stop this. Stop this.